Hi, and welcome KCIW listeners to 100.7 and KCIW.org, Brookings, Oregon. It's a brand new day, never been lived before. Here comes your participation, and Michael's going to help me. He's my guest speaker today. So when I say it's a brand new day, he's going to respond, never been lived before. Here we go, drum roll. It's a brand new day.
Never been lived before.
Woohoo! I love it. I love it. So welcome to Joyously Free with none better than Joanie Lindenmeyer. Yep, that's me, author and resident of Harbor, Oregon for 34 years now. My KCIW radio, Gadio show, as some of my queer people call it, are about LGBTQ stories and tips, along with religion, church, faith, and spirituality. Simply put, it's a combination of joy, freedom, courage, confidence, and collaboration. So welcome, KCIW listeners. You know a little bit about me. I'm a vibrant, joy-filled, great communicator, a title given to me by Emily. So this show is for a wide range of listeners and encompasses joy in every weekly topic. The purpose of our show is to share and spread joy and freedom, hence the title, Joyously Free. It is also the title of my second book that I co-authored with Elizabeth Atkins of twosisterswriting.com, and we are proud to boast 32 contributing writers, many local to Brookings, Gold Beach, and Crescent City. Our today's guest is also in one of my books called Healing Religious Hurts. Wait till you hear him. So our vision is that we all get to live our truth. This radio show is one that believes in hope and joy. So whatever name you put on God, make sure that you know that you're not troubled, afraid, or saddened. That joy and peace are an internal expression of love and harmony that is already within us, and we only have to reach deep within and let it out. All is well with my soul. Together today, we will seek understanding. We're going to think out of the box. We're going to be knowing about abundant gratefulness, respect, and appreciation with nature, friends, family, and our loving, kind community here on the Southern Oregon and Northern California coast. In just a few minutes, you'll be meeting my guest speaker, but you know how I start every single program. It's with a prayer and a centering. So let us take a breath in with good things and breathing out with doubt. Again, calming our soul. Take a deep breath in with gratitude and out with fear. Let's do one more. Breathe in deeply with joy and out with worry. Today's reading is from a book that actually the guest speaker here across from me gave to me this last Christmas. It's a book from Pema Chodron, Welcoming the Unwelcome. And I'm just going to read you one paragraph because it's going to tie in with what we're talking about today. These questions are closely related to one of the Buddha's main interests, how to lead a virtuous life. Every spiritual tradition is concerned with virtue. But what does virtue mean? Is it the same as following a list of do's and don'ts? Does a virtuous person have to be a goody-goody? Is it necessary to be dogmatic, rigid, and smug? Or is there room to be playful, spontaneous, and relaxed? Is it possible to enjoy life while at the same time be virtuous? When I read that paragraph, I thought immediately about every spiritual tradition is concerned with virtue. Since I have written 3 books in 2 years, I have traveled to numerous churches and denominations, talking and listening to people that have heavy things on their heart, and listening to people that are just full of total joy. Some of them had a list of do's and don'ts. Some of them were goody-goody two-shoes. And some were dogmatic, rigid, and smug. But you know, for me, I am a playful person. I am extremely spontaneous. I am extremely relaxed. I'm extremely a person that connects with my God, my Jesus, and my spirit as personal relationships. They bring out of me a joy that is not fear-based, a joy that there is abundant love. And I guess that would be called my virtuousness, if that's a word, virtuousness. So I'm going to ask you today to listen with your heart, to think about what does virtue mean to you, as our guest speaker and I are going to talk on many, many subjects. But the main one is your faith journey. And this person sitting right across from me, his name is Emergency Department Nurse Michael Irby. Some of you might know him here in town in Brookings, or maybe you've seen him up in Gold Beach. He is the honey bunny person that can just lift hearts, take away pains, take away sorrows, and just engulf you with his magnitude of love. So today, Michael, welcome to the show, and welcome to Let's Learn About You and Your Faith Journey. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Joan, and what a lovely introduction. Thank you. I try to live that every time I go into work and serve the patients and families that are brought before me that day, that shift. I try to live that on my days off when I'm encountering people, strangers, and walking down the street, or people that are selecting apples at Fred Meyer with me. There's a plug for Fred Meyer. Or coming down the steps today to KCIW, a really amazing radio station. And I say that not because I'm here. I am a travel nurse. My home is in Arkansas. I am a very oral, A-U-R-A-L person. I like sound. Sound is what really appeals to me. I'm sensual as well, so I like visual things as well, but it's sound. And so I encountered KCIW when I first moved here as a traveler. And
when was that?
That was in March of 2023, so almost 2 years ago. And I have to tell you, I've never heard a radio station in a town this size like this, and we are super blessed to have it. And I'm grateful for that as well. So there's a plug for them.
Oh, absolutely. High accolades. And yes. I agree. I've been associated with KCIW because they helped me produce the audio of None Better. That was Tom Bozak. And Michael, I wanted to tell you, I am 10 days out from None Better, the audio book being out to the world.
That's wonderful.
Which really means I've written 3 books in 2 years and did an oral book 1 year. So that's 4 books in 2 years. And you're a part of that because you're in Healing Religious Hurts with your great writing. And I'm so thankful for that. And people, if you're going, well, where do I get a hold of these books? Yep, you get a hold of them at our library at Forecastle Books. They're in Port Orford. They're in Crescent City. They're at twosisterswriting.com and 39,000 websites where you can order them. But, it's not about just having them, but that they're touching hearts. They're touching hearts. And that's sort of where you are. You are a big heart light and heart toucher, and you are a virtuous person, Would you talk a little bit about your faith journey?
I will, yes. I would say that as a very young child, I grew up and my parents were from differing traditions, neither of which practiced. They identified very loosely as Christians, maybe even as agnostic Christians. I guess the first step was when we moved in with my father's parents, my grandparents. And this was when I was 7 years old. And in the South, to have a Southern Baptist grandmother is a big deal.
Okay.
And so I did. And so she took me and my younger brother in hand, and it was her mission to get us saved, as it were, at the early age of 7. And so
at the Southern Baptist Church.
At the Southern Baptist Church, absolutely. And what happened, of course, is we moved there, and in the summer when I turned 7, and my first Christmas present from my grandmother was a King James Bible.
I'll be darned.
And so her faith was very important to her, and because I loved her so much, she was like a mom to me. Mm-hmm. I could see that a relationship with God, and in her expression of it with Jesus Christ, her Savior, was something that probably was pretty important for me as well because it was so important to her. And so that's kind of what started it. I lived with her, or our family lived with her for a couple of years before we moved away. And we as you might imagine, for a Southern Baptist, we went to church a lot. So Sunday morning.
3, 4, 5 days a week.
Exactly. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then if there was anything else, we were there as well. And yet, my grandmother never put upon me any obligation to do anything. She was just praying for my salvation, which in her tradition is something you do. You come to a realization that you need to be saved, and then you follow the altar call at some worship service, and you go down and you give your life over to Jesus. That never happened for me. And
why?
Simply because for me, in terms of how I understood it at the age of 7 and 8 years old, I had to feel it. It had to be authentic. And I never felt it. It wasn't that I didn't feel a sense of closeness to God and to Jesus Christ, to the Holy Spirit. But in terms of how it was being expressed in my grandmother's Southern Baptist church, it didn't really resonate with me. And so I would never do anything that would be inauthentic in terms of that journey. And so we moved away, and then I subsequently visited other churches, mostly as a result of school friends.
Can you list some of those denominations that you went to?
So then we moved, and I went with a school friend to a Church of Christ.
Okay.
So again, another Protestant denomination within Christianity. Went there for a couple of years, never really felt anything in terms of a pull. The notion of this man, this God, Jesus Christ, appealed to me. But in terms of how he was being manifested within the confines or the construct of these denominations, it didn't seem to resonate with me. We then...
and that means it was just uncomfortable. What does that really mean when it doesn't resonate with you?
It means that my expectation at that point, now I'm becoming junior high, my expectations in terms of a relationship with this divine, this God-man, for me would be something that would be pretty compelling emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, to the degree that I could understand it. As I told you at the outset, I'm a very sensual person in terms of sound and sight, touch, taste, obviously smell, all of the senses. So for me, I think at that point, religion needed to appeal more to my senses. And so for both of those particular denominations, it was a fairly straightforward service. There were hymns that were very similar between the denominations. There were readings. There was always the sermon, which was sort of the highlight. And that was pretty much it. And then ultimately the altar call, as it were, when people were invited. But for me, that didn't seem
So were you bored?
Yeah, I would say it was.
Okay,
bored.
I think that's what we need to get at. Because if you're not happy in a place, wherever you are, whether that's a school, a religion, a home, or whatever, if you're not happy in that place and you're bored and it's not something you like, then what do you do about it?
Exactly. And so for me, it was because my parents were not really involved in a religion when we moved, and I got to places where I couldn't rely upon the kindness of strangers, as it were, that being my classmates, then it would be back to me. And I spent a lot of time I would say on my religious journey, really just talking to God, praying, and not really knowing how to do that.
I don't know. That makes pretty good sense to me.
Exactly. I think that
talk and listen, and listen.
That was probably the thing that maybe ignited the issue. We moved again. My mother was a physician and was finishing school, and then we moved, and I had, again, school friends. And this time it was a female friend that invited me to go to a local Catholic church.
Okay.
And interestingly, my exposure to Catholics were my Southern Baptist grandmother would tell me things that she had learned. And God bless her, she wasn't a bigot. She wasn't a racist. She wasn't someone that had an issue, but it was what she was taught. And so when I lived with her, we would drive by the local Catholic church in order to get to the Southern Baptist church. And she would always motion to the church, the Catholic churches, we would drive by and say, well, there's where the Catholics have their Mass. And I never knew what that meant, and I never really asked her because I was relatively
Was it a
young.
negative connotation she had?
Yeah, it was a negative connotation.
So she was putting down, she
Yes,
was
yeah.
saying, hey, that's not us. That's
exactly.
Okay.
Being in a sense, and I think in her defense, based upon what she had probably learned, but the fact of the matter is being exclusivist and saying that they are not like us.
Right.
So I did.
And many people do that, Michael, even today. They drive by a church and they go, oh, man, that's not a part of us. That has nothing to do with us, and they just put up those barriers and those blockades. And I don't know, that doesn't seem very Christ-like to me, but go ahead.
No, and I think that there is room, obviously, for anything and everything when we talk about whatever analogy we want to make. When we make this lovely stew, since it's so cold and damp today, we think about a warm stew. And when we make a stew, we combine a lot of different ingredients, and together they marinate and they interconnect and they commune with one another, so to speak.
Great example.
Ultimately become this thing that's delectable and really probably non-reproducible. But that's a good thing, right? Every time we make stew, it's different, but it's better, and it's because of all these contributions. And so I think that's how we should look at the expression of our faith in terms of our religious journey, whether we are
And it may not
Christian-
be religious then. It may be spiritual, but not attached to a denomination or one of the four major religions of the world, which are pretty simple: Christianity, Buddhist, Hindu, and I'm going to say other for the sake of all the other stuff.
Right.
And I think that's why I appreciated the book that you gave me as a gift. Would you read the title and the name of this book again?
Yes, the book is called Welcoming the Unwelcome, and it's Wholehearted Living in a Broken-Hearted World. And it's by the author Pema Chodron, who is a Buddhist nun. She is American-born, grew up in a pretty traditional, actually also a Protestant type of background, and read her way into Buddhism, just like I read my way into my particular arrival at
tell us about
Christianity.
that.
And so back to when I went to a Roman Catholic parish. It happened to be on Easter of all times. That's when my friend invited
My favorite
me.
day of the year, Michael.
Exactly.
That is my favorite day of the year.
My favorite holiday as well. And so here is this now junior high boy, 8th grade, I think, walking into a Roman Catholic parish, and it was pretty traditional. The priests were supplied by a Benedictine monastery not far away, so more of a traditional type of environment.
And there's another thing listeners can click into. Google St. Benedict, Benedictine Oblates.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, sorry to go on a tangent there.
No, absolutely. And so here is this 8th grade boy coming into this environment where there are candles, where there are stained glass windows, where there are paintings, where there is incense, where there is holy water, where the body position is you're seated or you're standing or you're kneeling, you're crossing yourself. So all of the senses are being appealed to. And to me, this was so different than what my experience of religion had been. It sent me then on a journey and reading about that. And ultimately, I continued through most of my high school and young adult life to where I have come today.
And those traditions and those rituals within certain churches or denominations or religions are so vital to all of us.
It was really important for me, and I understand and accept because there are people, for example, I have friends who are actually Quaker, and so they are the other extreme, as it were, if we talk about extremes. Maybe they're the other end of the spectrum is what a better way to say it, where they have no ritual at all, and everything is very just unstructured. But for me, as I read and as I learned and how the Christian church, from my perspective, has inherited the tradition of Jewish worship. Jewish worship was very liturgical. The priests wore vestments. At the time, it was in the temple. There were ritual, there were candles, there was incense. There were these things that God actually instructed the Hebrew people to do and said, if you're going to worship me, here's the way in which I want to be worshiped. And so I feel like in some Christian expressions, denominations, that is continued, this liturgical style.
And a great example of that is in the series The Chosen,
yes,
where you can actually visually see how that is being portrayed within their community. Oh, keep going.
Absolutely. And that was, and I realized as part of this journey that was really important for me, is that if I were going to be a part of a denomination or an expression of Christianity, for me, it would have to be something that would incorporate and be an inheritor of those things. Ultimately, for me, it became the Eastern Orthodox Church.
And what does that mean? Is that a specific denomination?
It's a denomination. It is what I would say it is a lot of people look at Orthodoxy and they think that it looks sort of like the Catholic Church because there's a lot of liturgy, there's a lot of ritual, and that kind of thing. Historically, just very briefly, there were 5 major centers of Christianity. So in the West, Rome, from which we sort of evolved the Roman Catholic Church, but also then 4 other places in the East, Jerusalem, Antioch, Alexandria, and then ultimately Constantinople, which was the seat of the Eastern Roman Empire. And so a lot of people will hear Orthodox and they associate it with a particular nationality. In Orthodoxy, there is not this centrality like in the Roman Church where there's one leader, that being the Pope, and all those that would identify themselves as Roman Catholic would look to him as their leader. In the Orthodox Church, this is not the case. The head of the church is wherever you happen to live. So if you're in Russia, you're Russian Orthodox, then it's the Patriarch of Moscow that is the head of the church for you. If you're Greek, then you're Greek Orthodox. And so it's the Patriarch of Archbishop of Athens. And so that's how it kind of plays out in the Orthodox
Church. So do we have a USA one?
We don't have USA. We have a lot of immigrant churches because Orthodoxy was not native here. It was brought here by these different types of people, Russians, Greeks, Ukrainians, Romanians, Serbians, that kind of thing. And so they all brought their own expression of Christianity. These were the immigrants that came here to work, to find work and to find freedom. And they brought their religious traditions. And so we have a variety of expressions of Orthodoxy in this country. But no, there is not yet, we pray for that, there's not an American Orthodox Church at this point.
But that's back to that stew. You talk about that stew.
And that's what makes it lovely. And then the other thing I would just say is, and I shared this with you one time before personally, part of this, my faith journey, is also a very vivid dream that I had when I was 15 at a time when I was really struggling in terms of my home and family life. My family life was chaos, but for many of us it is, especially as a teenager. You're experiencing lots of chaos. And I was on this journey, and I was looking for a relationship with God in the way that made sense to me. And I had this dream, and it was probably when I was 15. And it was during a time when I was studying Roman Catholicism. I don't really associate the dream with that study, but I remember I was walking through a woods. And I was older than I was at that time, being 15. I was a young adult. And I remember walking, and I felt very peaceful, and I was on a mission. I knew where I was going, and it was just lovely. I came to a clearing, and in the distance, I saw a circle of men all facing one another in a circle. And when I saw this, I knew in the dream that I had arrived where I needed to be.
Joyously free!
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I came close, then I realized that it was our Savior, Jesus Christ, and the other 11 apostles that were standing in this circle. And Jesus looked up, and he saw me, and he took his hand and kind of made me or motioned me to come forward. And then as I came closer, he said to everyone assembled, "And this is John." And so I knew at that point John was the beloved disciple. And so in any event, and so for me, that's probably the pinnacle of my religious life.
Wow.
And
Beautiful.
I knew, and I'm grateful for many reasons, but primarily because it happened outside of a church. It happened outside of a religion or a denomination or expression. And so it goes to your point, spirituality first and foremost. If beyond that you want an expression or a denomination or a flavor, as it were, to add to that stew, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. How beautiful, Michael. And what a gift. And you are so connected to the divine, and the divine connected to you. It is a oneness, isn't it?
It is.
It's a oneness. And that's what a faith journey is, when you get to that point where it is just oneness. It is just oneness.
I agree with you.
Oh, my gollies. Just unbelievable. You are so amazing. I want to thank you from the top of my heart for sharing these stories, for being vulnerable as well, because to talk about many of this, we don't talk about it. And I encourage all the KCIW listeners and everybody out there to continue conversations about faith journey. Sit around and talk to somebody about it. So listeners, thank you for being with us today. We hope you have been inspired, challenged, and you've enjoyed Michael's stories and tips. And I think prayers of hope are what you're talking about too.
Indeed.
You've been a special guest of ours today. And from the top of the heart, my heart, I again thank you. Thank you, KCIW 100.7 from Brookings, Oregon. I appreciate Tom Bozak, Mike Gorse, Candace and Rose, and the entire team for making this happen. This aired Joyously Free show will be found on kciw.org, so please share it, re-listen, and send us some comments. So, on behalf of KCIW, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you around town, and have a great day.